Good morning, Guam. This is your DJ, Mark Schwartz, spinning some platters for you today. Let's start it off on this Monday morning, December 8th, 1941, December 7th, of course, over there in the States. Let's get going this morning with some Judy Garland. I'm just wild about Harry.
I'm just wild about Harry, and Harry's wild about me. The heavenly blisses of his kisses fills me with ecstasy. He's sweet just like chocolate candy, or like the honey from a bee. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm getting a notice from Network there in New York. Hold on just a second, folks. Let me see.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're standing by for further word from Honolulu, and we expect to rejoin them in just a moment. However, here's a bulletin which has just come into the NBC newsroom in New York. Nomura, the Japanese ambassador, and Kurusu, the special Japanese envoy, were at the State Department at the time of the White House's announcement of the attacks on Hawaii.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a complete shock. I'm sure that you're as shocked as I am. I'd like to tell you...
This is not a drill. This is not a drill. General quarters, all hands man your battle station.
Welcome to the We Raise the Stars and Stripes Over Japan Prepodcast. This manuscript was written by the late Max Brodowski. It's edited by myself, Mark Schwartz, and I'm very pleased to tell you this story, which is that of some American and Allied civilian prisoners who were held within Japan during the Great Pacific War, and they became the first prisoners to raise the American flag over mainland Japan and gain an understanding of compassion with their guards for the vanquished at a place called Futatabi. No portion of this story can be copied, duplicated, or used in reference in any way, directly or indirectly, without the expressed written permission of Mark S. Schwartz. We Raise the Stars and Stripes Over Japan is a true story based on the manuscript written by the late Max Brodowski of San Bruno, California. Max wrote a manuscript upon his return from prison camp in Japan, which tells of his ordeal surviving 3.5 years as a prisoner with his colleagues from Pan American and other American and Allied civilians within wartime Japan. For the first time, Max's story will divulge the conditions which Americans and Allied civilian prisoners were subjected to and the sacrifices they endured, along with their guards and the families of local prisoners for nearly 3.5 years. We learn that even during war, some people act compassionately, like the head guard, Mr. Takatoshi Higasa-san, the head of Futatabi Civilian Internment Camp No. 4, Hyogo-ken, Kobe, Japan. Mr. Higasa had to balance between being too strict, as his supervisors expected him to be, and too lenient, as the American prisoners manipulated him and the other guards to be. You know, there's an ocean of good historical relevant books written about World War II. Many concern the Pacific Theater, the Great Pacific War of World War II as it's known in Japan. It's critical for historians to examine accounts of military battles from both perspectives of the conqueror and the vanquished. This war was on that level, on that pedestal of military epic clashes during a critical juncture in history. This story touches on the major military battles, usually after the fact, based on information obtained by Japanese newspaper sources written in English and obtained by the prisoners through their guards. Later, 3 prisoners used parts from a B-29 which crashed directly onto their prison camp at Mount Futatabi, about 6 miles behind Kobe, and fashioned a surreptitious radio receiver. Many books have been written about the home front in the United States of America during the war. Every family, it seems, kept a scrapbook back then of their family members in the service, or to remember those who had been killed or injured, those missing in action, or even worse, those in a Japanese or a German prisoner of war camp. The stories of the wives and families back home are described in detail, as well as the lives of the prison guards and their families, and the local prisoners. Few books have told what it was like to actually live in Japan during the war. Many books have been written from the diaries of people from various prison camps in Japan and Germany, or about prison camps such as the Diary of Anne Frank. Gene Houston and Jim Houston wrote the definitive story of life in an American concentration camp in Farewell to Manzanar. Years ago, Mrs. Houston told me, this author, and his children, my children, that it's critical that this book be written, so people in Japan and the United States can learn that not all Japanese were vicious towards Americans, that even in the midst of this terrible, racially tinged war, that an understanding grew between our peoples at a place called Futatabi. This is the story of American and Allied civilian internees within Japan during the Great Pacific War, told through their diaries, the Mainichi English edition newspapers published throughout the war, a navigator's map case filled with the prisoners' committee documents, tape-recorded interviews, photographs, and records from the modern military field branch of the United States National Archives. It's the story of a godson, me, who was determined to find out as much as I could about my godfather's experience and his journey of discovery. My journey of discovery, actually, became an odyssey in and of itself. Max Brodowski was a chief mechanic for Pan American Airways on Guam. He was captured with all his American colleagues, both military and civilians, and wrote a diary throughout his captivity and condensed it into a 13-page manuscript after the war. He sent it to me in about 1969, I guess, as a bar mitzvah present and as a reward for earning my Eagle Scout. I always have considered my Uncle Max's story to be the best never-told story about World War II. I graduated with a dual BA degree in journalism and political science from San Diego State University in 1978. I worked for the Navy for 37 years as a civilian in the command and control computer technology industry. Upon retiring, I taught English for a couple years at a refugee agency in San Diego, California. I moved up here to rural Oregon in 2018, and I launched this podcast on December 7th, 2018. Through the years, I traveled extensively throughout the United States and within Japan to pursue Max's diaries and the story of the men who were with him in the prison camp. What I found exceeded all of my imagination as to the depth and the meaning of human compassion. I want to welcome you to this podcast. I hope that you'll enjoy each episode, and I should be catching you up. It's going to take a couple years to get you all the way through Japan, but we'll do it together. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy the story. I figure, Max sent this manuscript to me for free. I should give it away in a podcast. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.